came from a distant land. Our lives already planned. We came in ships from across the sea. Never again home we'd see. And now we become
Great African elder, statesman, and activist Akyaaba Addai-Sebo is a Ghanaian analyst, journalist, and Pan-Africanist who is credited with developing, in 1987, the recognition of October as Black History Month in the United Kingdom. With Ansel Wong, Elder Addai-Sebo co-edited the 1988 book, Our Story, a Handbook of African History and Contemporary Issues. By the way, this background music you're hearing is the signature tune for Elder Akyaaba Addai-Sebo's African Roots Show on Pacifica Radio, WPFW, in the 1970s in the Washington, D.C. and Maryland areas of the United States. The song is sung by Zulema Kosio and is titled American Fruits, African Roots. Zulema Kosio was an American disco and rhythm and blues singer and songwriter. Aside from her solo career, she was a member of an early lineup of Faith, Hope, and Charity, and she worked as a backing vocalist and songwriter with the legendary Aretha Franklin. Moving onwards, Elder Addai-Sebo's activism spans the African continent, the United Kingdom, and the United States, and his influencers include C.L.R. James, Chancellor Williams, John Henrik Clarke, and Jewell Mazique. In 2018, the Pan-Africanist was named by the African Voice newspaper on a list of 61 influential Ghanaians in the diaspora. The great African elder from Ghana in December of 2022 was honored by the University of London's School of Oriental and African Studies when the institution conferred on him an Honorary Doctorate of Literature. Today, he joins us on #The African Dream, your favorite human interest chat show. My name is Ofori, your host and producer. Today's edition is also co-produced by Arakunrin Lekan, who is a Nigerian-based editor and co-producer for this season of #The African Dream. Welcome to today's edition, Elder Akyaaba Addai-Sebo. Thank you very much for making time to join us. We appreciate you. So in 1987, you launched the observation of Black History Month in the United Kingdom. Do give us a short background of what inspired this for you.
Circumstances brought me to the United Kingdom in 1984 as a refugee. I had problems with the Rawlinses and Chikates regime, and we had a political misunderstanding, and they became intolerant of my position, and they sent a death squad after me. I managed to escape, and I was declared a wanted man, played hide and seek with the security agencies, and managed to cross the border into Cote d'Ivoire, and then came to Britain as a refugee. Then I landed a job at the Greater London Council as a special projects coordinator dealing with the problems of racism and designing programs and activities for the local governments to meet their obligations under the Race Relations Act of 1976. So included in these anti-racist programs was also anti-apartheid programs, because apartheid is racism.
Yeah.
And One day in 1985, I was going to work, and when I got to work, I saw our group secretary very downcast and almost in tears. So I asked her what was the matter, and she said, "Would you believe it? I was putting Marcus to bed last night, and after our prayers, and when I was leaving the room, Marcus called me, Mom." She went back to the bed side of Marcus, and Marcus asked his mother, "Mom, why can't I be white?" And that shocked the mother, because the mother had deliberately named Marcus after Marcus Mosiah Garvey.
Okay.
So for her child to be questioning his identity at the age of getting to 7 was really shocking. And she said to me, "I have failed my child." And I said, "No, hell no, you haven't, Elizabeth. It's rather the institutions of state, the local government, the national curriculum that have failed your son and others." So it stirred up something in me, and that we have a problem of identity. So I decided to keep my antennas on and observe and visit schools and others and watch how school children interacted. I'll talk to them on trains, on buses. I'll go to the school and watch them, observe them play and all that. Then sometimes coming out of train stations and all that, I'll engage some of them. I'll see some. And the physical features, everything shows that this person is a Ga, or is a Asante, or is an Ewe. And I try to speak to them in the local language, and they will shrink. They don't want to be identified as a Ghanaian. And it shocked me. And they were mimicking themselves as Afro-Caribbeans, African Caribbeans.
This was in the UK, right?
In the UK, yes. And with the African American community also, they will shrink from being the African Caribbean community. They will also shrink. Some of the boys and girls will shrink away from being identified as Africans,
right,
or people of African descent.
Right.
And this worried me. I said, my goodness, something has to be done. Something has to be done about this. So I thought about it for a couple of weeks. Then I drew out a program and discussed it with my colleagues at work at the Ethnic Minorities Unit at the Greater London Council. And what we decided was that we were going to celebrate and pay tribute to the contributions of Africans and people of African descent to world civilization, and especially the growth and development of the United Kingdom and Europe from antiquity to the present. People have to know what Africans and people of African descent have done. and particularly to the growth and development of the United Kingdom.
Looking back from 1985, when you joined the Greater London Council, to the amazing things that you've been able to achieve presently, what were your challenges leading the Black History Month UK movement in the 80s?
Well, you will recall that we were in a period of the Reagan and Margaret Thatcher administrations at the Whitehall and in the White House. So the White Hall and White House, Reagan and Thatcher. And at that time also, you recall the Randall Robinsons and others were campaigning very, very strongly for the US, Britain, and others to break economic ties and put sanctions on the apartheid regime, for them to relax the apartheid system and then open the way for democratic elections and all that. So there was a lot of pressure coming from groups, campaigning groups in the US and Europe and all that. And Margaret Thatcher and Reagan were resisting and providing support to the apartheid regime. And we were also fortunate that the council, the Greater London Council, the governing body of the capital of the United Kingdom, was run by progressives who were very humanitarian and concerned about injustice, inequality, and racism. And at that time, they were under the leadership of Ken Livingstone. And there were councillors like Paul Boateng, Benny Grant, and others who were very, very progressive. So we got a lot of support from them. And so that was the background. So it was a very difficult period. And as a result of that, they decided, that is the Thatcher government decided to abolish the Greater London Council. And we decided that whatever be the case, we were going to be very defiant and use whatever resources that was there within legal means to bash out in the community, the whole of the UK, and heavy campaigns against apartheid and racism. So we were very, very, very lucky and fortunate that we had support of the Greater London Council, Inner London Education Authority, and the Association of London Authorities, and then the London Strategic Policy Committee. So they provided a lot of support. Well, I'll go back a little bit. We got together and organized historical lectures and concerts across the UK, but mainly centered in London, and brought in African historians, scientists, and others. Like we brought in Henrik Clarke, Ben Jekanan, Francis Cress-Wilson, Tony Martin. We brought all of these people into London. Angela Davis, we brought Winnie Mandela, and we brought all of these people, Nina Simone, we brought all of them
That's interesting.
to London, UK. They toured and lecturing and educating people. So
right.
Out of these historical lectures, then we noticed that the period 1987-1988 marked the 150th anniversary of emancipation in the Caribbean, then the 100th anniversary of the birth of Marcus Mosiah Garvey, and the 25th anniversary of the founding of the Organization of African Unity, and the 30th anniversary of Ghana's independence, which sparked the whole liberation process. So all these together and said we're going to celebrate the period 87-88 as African Jubilee Year. We launched it on June 30th, 1987, at the Central Hall at Westminster. And we invited President Mugabe, Thomas Sankara, and then Kenneth Kaunda to come and open the African Jubilee Year for us. They all decided to come, but there emerged an emergency of the OAU summit. So they all decided that they will send Sally Mugabe, Mugabe's wife, who came to stand in for the three presidents. But we had video messages from Thomas Sankara and others. And so we launched it with Burning Spear. My goodness, Burning Spear, it was one of the incredible experiences that I've had in my life.
Oh boy.
The spirit there was so uplifting, and Burning Spear electrified the hall, and the director of the hall came to me and said that he was going to turn the lights off and shut down. I said, please, do you know what is happening in there? So I took him backstage and opened the curtain for him to observe. So he quietly went back.
You can't stop history from happening.
You can't stop it. That's what happened. It was tremendous.
Yeah, so it sounded like you received a lot of support, for the movement right in its initial stages. Now, thanks to your efforts and many others like those you mentioned, and probably a lot more that we might not be able to mention today, the Black History Month is widely celebrated in both US and the UK as well, and even other parts of Europe, but not as revered in Africa. Are you aware of any plans, or do you have any advice to adjust this so it can be more celebrated and revered in Africa? Because people are of the assumption that, well, it's Africa, so we don't need to bother about it. This is the Black continent. But what do you say to
that? That is the false assumption. Africa needs it more than Europe, UK, and the US, because Africa, we are still trapped in the trauma of colonialism, and we are in a state of denial. And we think that we know who we are, but in actual fact, we don't know who we are. Because if we know who we are, our children will not come to the United Kingdom and US and feel uncomfortable identifying themselves with Africa because of what they see on television, always, which are very depressing images that they see on television. And of course, children can be very, very brutal. They can be very brutal to each other. Yes. So that is the issue. We are trapped in a very difficult situation where revisionism has taken over, and we have leaders who have very little understanding of what it means to be African. They mimic Western lifestyles and values and place these lifestyles and values above everything else. And that if you look at our curriculum across Africa, you see that even things that they are not teaching in the US and the UK and Europe, they are still teaching in Africa. We have antiquated books, and it's very depressing. Our leaders are comfortable with the colonial culture, and they don't have the will to change. We don't have leaders like Nkrumah, Lumumba, or Gaddafi. We don't have them now. So that is a problem. And you recall that when Nkrumah was overthrown in February 1966, his books were banned. And the American ambassador at that time, Franklin Williams, who was an African American in Lincoln University with President Nkrumah, he went to Achimota School and supervised the pulling out all books by Nkrumah from the libraries and schools and supervised them, set the books on fire. This was Franklin Williams. I gave him hell in the US. In 1976, 77, I gave him hell in the US. Yes, but that is what has happened. So there is some self-censorship and fear that they will be stepping on the toes of the Americans and those who combine their intelligence to overthrow Nkrumah, and they may not get aid or support or whatever it is, because Nkrumah is a unique African leader. There is no living or there's no contemporary leader of our time that I know of who wrote so much as Kwame Nkrumah. Maybe apart from Lenin, I don't know any head of state or government in the world who wrote as much as Nkrumah. And he was a practitioner, a theoretician, and who achieved great results. So Nkrumah has to be studied by the economics department, the history department, the political science department. All these departments have to study Nkrumah.
Hopefully those watching are going to deeply think on some of the recommendations and observations that you're currently making. Now, folks, this is Ofori. Thanks for watching us here on #The African Dream. Today we have for our very special guest, Elder Akyaaba Addai-Sebo. He is one who pushed with a couple of others to begin the founding and celebration of Black History Month in the UK. Thank you for joining us, Elder. Now, the prestigious University of London School of Oriental and African Studies in December of 2022 bestowed on you an Honorary Doctorate of Literature. Congratulations on that, by the way. We will now play a few minutes of the video from your acceptance speech that day.
Director, I have the honor to request that you confer the degree of Doctor of Literature, honoris causa, upon Akyaaba Addai-Sebo. Sorry.
By virtue of the authority invested in me, I confer the degree of Doctor of Literature honoris causa on Akyaaba Addai-Sebo. Congratulations. Akyaaba will now address the gathering.
Thank you, SOAS, for honoring Africa. We are celebrating Africa today. I'm humbled to be here before you. My wife, family, friends, and I are grateful to Lord Hastings, Chair of the Board of Trustees, Zainab Badawi, President, Provost Claire Ozen, Director Professor Adam Habib, Director Laura Hammond, Kadir Emir, Chief Operating Officer, Amapoku, librarian, and Rukia, and the student body, who have lifted me so high and placed me in the firmament of honors, where I now hang. Like a shining star, I hang up there in the sky, not on my own, but on the invisible shoulders and hands of those whose guidance and patience have brought me this far. I accept this honor in eternal tribute to them. I accept this honor in tribute to Abuabo Primary School and Adisada College teachers in Ghana, who in the 1950s and 60s gave me this unique facility to read and write. In literal sense, it is these teachers who made me literate and instilled in me the discipline of reading, writing, and asking questions. It is this unique gift that has brought me this far. Growing up, therefore, I read every literature that came in my way. I loved the sound of what I read.
Welcome back to #The African Dream. My name is Ofori, and today my guest is Elder Akyaaba Addai-Sebo, the world-acclaimed Ghanaian architect of UK's Black History Month. We just watched a brief video of his speech at the University of London School of Oriental and African Studies. We encourage you to watch Elder Addai-Sebo's full acceptance speech, which is now available on the SOAS YouTube page. Elder, thanks for making time to join us here at #The African Dream. But before we leave you, tell us if there are any innovative ways or ideas to spin more dynamism into the Black History Month, both in the US and the UK, and like you said, even in Africa, where you boldly mentioned the fact that we even need it more than those outside of the continent.
We have to purposely push and keep pushing and making demands on our local authorities where we live and governments, particularly if you're in Africa, the ministries of education, the ministries of culture and tourism and all that. You have to be making demands on them to tell our story properly. Tell our story properly. And also look at the national curriculum. It's very, very, very important. We leave the national curriculum in the hands of people who are trapped in the mental slavery, as Bob Marley told us, and they are unwilling to break away. They are afraid of offending the colonial master.
We need to embrace our culture. We need to embrace our identity, because that is what will lead us to breaking out of that fear of offending the so-called colonizer, or even help us to, march on forward and begin the process of deconstructing, decolonizing, and acceptance of who we are as Africans.